Fox News at Night. I'm Ed Henry in Washington, in for Shannon Bream all week. New tonight, in an unfolding controversy involving President Barack Obama and President Donald Trump, David Axelrod, the longtime Obama advisor, says tonight the former president did indeed take a shot at President Trump during an interview with Britain's Prince Harry, despite not naming the current president directly in that sit-down. Accusing the current commander-in-chief of using social media to, quote, on the entire conversation on the internet, unquote. The attacks mirror those from his former boss, Barack Obama, who seems to be breaking a recent tradition of former presidents not eviscerating their successors. Our correspondent Lauren Blanchard joins us live tonight to lay out the firestorm that's playing out. Good to see you, Lauren.
Hey, Ed. Well, in that friendly interview, former President Obama said how people interact on social media today could splinter society, especially when used by leaders to divide, in a not so subtle reference to the current commander-in-chief's famous Twitter use.
One of the dangers of the internet is that people can have entirely different realities. They can be just cocooned in information that reinforces their current biases.
He's certainly not the only one. He is the most powerful one right now, but this is something that plagues the entire conversation on the internet, and this is something President Obama has been concerned about for a long time.
And the president doesn't seem likely to close his Twitter app anytime soon, waving this "keep on tweeting" sign when he landed in Florida for the Christmas holiday, despite the many politicians and pundits who have called on the president to stop. And there is an unwritten rule that former presidents typically do not publicly speak ill of their successors. While former President Obama did not specifically call out President Trump's Twitter use, it's not the first time Mr. Obama has stirred controversy for his veiled jabs. At an event in Chicago earlier this month, President Obama raised eyebrows while talking about the need to protect American freedoms like the press, a regular target of President Trump's frustration. Mr. Obama suggesting the U.S. could go the way of Germany in the 1930s if citizens grew complacent, saying we have to tend to this garden of democracy or else things could fall apart quickly. And there's also the question of whether the Obamas, who are close to Prince Harry, will get an invitation to the big royal wedding in May, and if President Trump will be snubbed by the royal couple. British tabloids report some government officials worry not inviting the current president could strain U.S.-UK relations, but the prince says the guest list is still up in the air. Ed?
I suspect after that interview, President Trump may not want an invite. Lauren Blanchard, thanks for giving us all the information. With President Trump tearing apart his predecessor's legacy, one government regulation at a time, it's probably not surprising they have real sharp policy differences. But complaining about tweets? Let's dig a little deeper with Fox News contributor, senior editor at The Federalist, Molly Hemingway, and senior politics writer for U.S. News and World Report, David Cantonese. I appreciate you both coming in. David, I want to start with you because on one hand, there is this recent tradition. George W. Bush in particular made it clear, I'm getting off the stage. I'm not going to attack Barack Obama once he comes to office, even though we have sharp differences. But you go back in history, Eisenhower, Truman, these two went after each other. There have been many examples. But why won't Barack Obama just leave the stage?
Well, look, I think first we have to be careful. He never even mentions Donald Trump. He's been very sparing in his criticism.
But David Axelrod made it clear.
I think we all know. We all know what he's talking about. But
so
I would say
he
is breaking precedent because Trump is breaking precedent and how he is acting. No one, I mean, President Trump acting on social media is different than what we've ever seen. Criticizing the FBI director, criticizing his own attorney general, criticizing Hillary Clinton constantly with caustic attacks. So I think, right, nicknames, everybody's, up for grabs for this guy. So I think President Obama feels a responsibility to weigh in, but he's doing it very sparingly. He's not going to the level that President Trump is.
President Trump is fair game as well. David makes a fair point. But if you're Barack Obama and you want to deliver a punch, why not just say it? Why are you playing these games and saying the 1930s in Germany? He's basically comparing this president to Hitler, to the Nazis.
I think the thing that basically differentiates Barack Obama from Donald Trump is that Donald Trump is more aggressive, whereas Barack Obama is passive aggressive. And so he doesn't name him, but everybody knows he's talking about him. When he had policy differences with Republicans over immigration, he said that Republicans were scared of widows. year-old orphans. He's fond of attacking. He just did it in a more passive-aggressive fashion, and people are not familiar with this more direct, like straight-on, insulting fashion. They both could stand to improve their insult game.
Are there a couple of other things going on? First, David, I talked to Democratic insiders who say they think that Barack Obama is one of the only senior Democrats who can get inside this president's head. And that's partly what's going on. He doesn't care what Schumer says, Pelosi, Chuck and Nancy dismiss. But when Barack Obama speaks, this president listens.
Possibly, but I think, to Molly's point, he's got such a different demeanor and sort of approach. Is the softer touch the way to get into Donald Trump's head? I mean, usually what we saw through the campaign is if you strike back at Trump, he hits back twice as hard.
He responds to a real punch, not to a wimpy punch.
Well, and Obama's just never going to go there. He never had that temperament. He's not gonna use the rhetoric that Donald Trump has. But I think if you talk to Republicans, I did over the last week doing my Trump end of year story, they want him to stop tweeting. They think, I mean, John Kelly, his chief of staff, wants him to do less tweeting. The people supportive of him want him to tweet less.
This is his way, and he says it again and again, and he's right on this point. This is how he gets around the mainstream media, unfiltered. And Molly, I want to ask you, as much as the Democrats dismiss the tweeting, for the former president, he could have gone after the tax cut. He could have gone on and on about literally dozens of Trump policies. Does this suggest that maybe the tweeting gets to the Democrats more than they want to admit?
Well, also, he's not going after all of the policy accomplishments because it's a rebuttal of what the previous 8 years
tearing apart the Obama legacy.
You can go after tweets because generally people do say, oh, I don't like the way he tweets, even if they actually kind of do enjoy it and they enjoy following him and they react to everything he says. But you can't go after this strong record of tearing down all the buildup and regulations, the Supreme Court appointment, the huge success of the tax cut at the end of the year, the defeating ISIS.
That Obama couldn't do. He called ISIS the JV squad.
Yeah, so instead of going after policy stuff, you go after the rhetoric because it's an easy hit.
So real quick, maybe does this suggest that even Barack Obama knows that Trump is succeeding more than Democrats want to admit?
I think everyone is having that end of year realization that as they spent the whole year mocking his Twitter, he actually had a very successful year.
He's had more success on policy, but he's losing public opinion. This is still a president at 37% approval rating, one of the lowest in history.
Fair point, but when Bernie Sanders is even saying, hey, the tax cut's not so bad.
It is, but it's not popular.
Maybe it's going to get more popular.
That's a big question.
Appreciate you.
Sure thing.
Meanwhile, lawyers for President Trump keep saying they expect